in the wrong place. I'm gonna ask everybody to just do very quick introductions, please no more than 10 seconds. Your name and if you're part of EPAC, what your affiliation with EPAC is, if you're part of PAG, what that is, and if you're a presenter, where you're from. So I will start. I'm Abigail Okrent. I'm the EPAC chair. I use she or they pronouns, and I work for Pima County Department of Environmental Quality. And I'm going to call people in order I see them. So next is Dustin.
All right, thanks, Abigail. Dustin Fitzpatrick. I'm PAG's Air Environmental Planning Administrator. And just back to the quorum real quick, Abigail, to clarify. We've got Pima County, City of Tucson, Sahuarita. So we're looking, we'll announce if we reach quorum with the jurisdictional members, the 5 jurisdictional members, to be able to proceed on that action item. Otherwise, we can save that for the next meeting and proceed with the other informational items. Thanks.
Jeanette.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Jeanette DeWren, Transportation Planning Director here at PAG. I oversee the transportation planning and environmental planning groups. So Dustin and the team, happy to be here. Thanks for showing up today, and look forward to the presentations.
Thanks. Next, I see Kim Franklin. There's more than one Kim on this call.
Hi, I'm Kim Franklin. I'm the Associate Director for Conservation at the Desert Museum. And I'm one of the presenters today, and have served on the EPAC committee in the past.
Thanks, Kim. Next, I see Katie, also from the Desert Museum.
Hi, yeah, I'm Katie Predick. I'm a conservation scientist at the Desert Museum.
Thank you. Jesse? Okay, not hearing anything from Jesse. I'm going to move on to Jace. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No, that's perfect. My name is Jace Lanko. I'm with Watershed Management Group, the Desert Rivers Restoration Manager. I will also be presenting today on our Arundo Donax removal effort. Pronouns are he, him.
Thank you. Sarah Truby. And apologies if I mispronounced your name.
That was also perfect. Yeah, so I'm Sarah Truby. I run the water programs at Sky Island Alliance. I will also be presenting on some of our Arundo and invasive species management efforts at springs around the region. I also am having crazy computer problems, so please let me know if I freeze or you can't hear me.
Thanks. You sounded loud and clear. Luke?
Good morning, everybody. Luke Cole. I'll be a presenter today, and I'm coming from the Sonoran Institute, and I direct our Santa Cruz River program. Good to see you all. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Luke. Next, I see Charles or Chuck.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Chuck Stack. I am the Town of Oro Valley Citizen Representative.
Thanks. Next, I see Elizabeth Baldwin.
Hi, I'm Liz Baldwin. I'm a faculty member in the University of Arizona School of Government and Public Policy, and I'll be presenting with Kim Franklin on some work we've been doing on invasive grasses.
Great, thank you. And next I see the other Kim, Kimberly.
Kimberly Baeza, County Wastewater.
Thanks. Michael Campbell.
Mike Campbell, recent graduate of University of Arizona, dual master's degree in the Water Society and Policy program and the Urban Planning program. Here presenting today with Luke Cole on opportunities for environmental restoration in the Middle Santa Cruz River using effluent-based flows. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Natalie?
Good morning. I'm Natalie Shep. I'm the Climate and Community Engagement Manager with the Pima County Department of Environmental Quality.
Thanks. And my Vice Chair, Paula.
Sorry about that. Paula Bloomer, Town of Marana, Environmental Project Manager.
Thanks. Now my icons keep shifting around. So anybody that, ooh, whoa, there's a whole nother page. Never mind. Melanie.
Good morning. I'm Melanie Alvarez, and I'm a planning coordinator with Pima Association of Governments.
Thanks, Melanie. I am probably going to mispronounce this next name. Idelise.
Good morning, Idelise Moyet, Project Managers for Department of Public Works, representing Town of Sahuarita.
Thank you. Howard?
Howard Myers, member of the public and SABA member.
Thank you, Howard. Hannah, good to see you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Oden, planning manager with PAG.
Thank you. Nicole?
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Gillette, City of Tucson Climate Action Team.
Thank you. David Barnes?
Good morning, David Barnes, Manager in Environment, Land and Water at the for Freeport McMoran Sea operations.
Thanks, David. Becca?
Thanks. This is Becca Kamak with the Tucson Airport Authority. I'm the Deputy Chief of our CERCLA and NEPA programs.
Thanks. Sarah Height? All right, move on to Michael Garcia.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can all see and hear me. I'm a planner with the town of Oro Valley.
Thank you. Lydia?
Morning, everybody. Lydia Barker. I'm a planner for the City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility.
Thank you. Any of the PAG folks that I missed like to introduce yourselves?
I think the other PAG members that you see on the list are just running the tech in the background for us.
That's what I thought. Did I miss anybody else? Okay. How is our quorum status, Dustin?
Let me see. Melanie, do we have enough jurisdictional members?
I do not believe so currently.
Okay, well, we will skip item 3 then, I guess. One more thing before we move to the in-kind form. This, Mia and Paula's terms as chair and vice chair end at the end of this year. So we will need a new chair and vice chair starting in January for future EPAC meetings. So I encourage people to think about whether or not they're interested, and you're absolutely welcome to reach out to me and I assume to Paula if you have any questions. And we're going to go to Dustin for the in-kind form.
Sure, thanks, Abigail. So I'll read this off here. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know. We may be affected by the federal shutdown and furloughs on that point. But time spent in preparation for the meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. So if you are eligible, please do let us know.
Thanks, Dustin. And I'm going to move agenda item 3 to the bottom of the agenda, but I'm not making a motion that kind of moving because I can't do that without quorum. So I am just executively pushing where that is for now. That brings us to the beginning of our presentations. So our next presentation is invasive species and hazard mitigation. I have all the speakers' bios, but I don't know which speakers are speaking on this. So if you want to say your names, I can read your bios. Okay, Elizabeth Baldwin and Kim Franklin. Wonderful. Let me read them. Dr. Liz Baldwin is a professor of environmental policy in the University of Arizona's School of Government and Public Policy. She has received funding from the National Science Foundation and the Arizona Institute for Resilience to study the management and governance of invasive grasses in southern Arizona and to share her findings with the broader Pima County community. Dr. Kim Franklin is the Associate Director for Conservation at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, where she leads collaborative, community-driven efforts to protect Sonoran Desert biodiversity. She founded the Sonoran Desert Cooperative Weed Management Area in 2017, bringing together agencies, tribes, and community partners to coordinate invasive species management across jurisdictions. More recently, she helped launch the Desert Fire and Invasives Collaborative with Pima County and Tucson Fire, uniting fire and natural resource professionals to address the increasing risk of invasive species-driven wildfires in the Sonoran Desert. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks for the invitation to speak to PAG, to the EPAC committee. So I have served on the EPAC committee in the past, but it's been a number of years since I've given a talk on invasive species to this committee. And so I thought I would give a little background on the issue, since there's been a lot of turnover since I was last on this committee. The background image here on this title slide is an image of stinknet in Cave Creek, Arizona, in that area. And that is one of the newer things that I haven't spoken about before with this committee. This new invasive species that has become extremely problematic in Maricopa County and Pinal counties, and is starting to spread here in Tucson. So just a little background. The Sonoran Desert, the Mojave Desert, they're relatively new ecosystems. So that just meaning that if you go back 10,000 years, the plant assemblage that you would see here would look very different than what you see now, which means that there's a lot of open space, which is represented by that bare ground that we have in the Sonoran Desert. About 100 years ago, about the turn of the last century, rangeland scientists were looking for grasses that were resilient to heavy grazing and to drought. And they found these grasses in Africa. And so here's on this slide, I just wanted to point out that this problem of invasive grasses is not something that's unique to Tucson or to the Sonoran Desert. It's a problem throughout the Southwest, the desert Southwest. We have buffalo grass. It was a major problem here. It's a warm season grass, so less problematic in other areas. The winter annuals are very problematic to the north of us. Most of you have probably heard of cheatgrass, not shown here, which covers millions of acres in the Great Basin. So this is a problem that we're dealing with throughout the Western United States. This is stinknet. It's not a grass, it's a forb. It's the newest invader that is fueling fires in the Sonoran Desert. This is shown much larger than actual size. To give you a sense of how big it is, this is a team here in Tucson helping remove stinknet that has overtaken this person's yard. So those small yellow spherical flowers are actually quite small, but it forms these massive stands of what is essentially fuel when it dries out. So what these grasses and then this new forb, stinknet, are doing is causing the grassification of the Sonoran Desert. So in the past, the desert, the band of desert at the base of our Sky Island mountain ranges and then the desert basins would have served as a fire break between the areas where we live, our cities, and then the ecosystems that we find on these mountain ranges in which fire is a natural part. So we expect grasslands, woodlands, and forested ecosystems to burn at some frequency. But now these grasses and stinknet are filling in that open space in the desert and eliminating what was an ecosystem service that the desert provided us, which was a fire break. This is happening across the globe. I just wanted to mention that if you follow the news on fire, you'll see that there's fires all over the place: Spain and Portugal, Greece, Australia, in Iceland this year, in New Jersey and North Carolina, in Brazil, where they are clearing the Amazon and planting some of these grass species on purpose for cattle. The biggest buffalo grass fire that I'm aware of is this 250,000 acre buffalo grass fire that was in March of 23 in Australia. So buffalo grass is one of our probably the most abundant invasive fuel species that we have here in the Tucson Basin. And it's the top conservation priority for Saguaro National Park. The issue of these fires in the United States has gained some attention recently because of the fire in Lahaina in Hawaii, which was driven by invasive grasses and high winds. Buffalo grass was one of the fuels of that fire. Over 100 people lost their lives in that fire. And then more recently in Los Angeles, where over 10,000 homes were lost, This was driven in, there was invasive species definitely in the wildland urban interface that contributed to this. It was also a result of these increasingly dramatic swings from wet to dry conditions, something that we are actually seeing here in Tucson. I mean, it's been extremely dry this summer, and then all of a sudden we had about 2 to some places 3 inches of rain earlier this month. So these swings between extremely dry and wet conditions can build up vegetation and then set the conditions for these really destructive fires. And just to give you a sense of the fires that are going on here in our region, there's lots of fires all the time. And unless you're following the local news, you're probably missing a bunch of these. This is the Mercer fire, which was only 25 acres in 2019. It burned through a buffalo grass patch. And I just showed this one because it's one where we were following the mortality of the saguaros post-fire. And so this is pretty recent post-fire, just a week post-fire. I'm showing you the destruction that these fires cause in the desert. The native species are not adapted to fire. In 2020, if you can think back to that year, the pandemic was happening. Things were shut down, and there was also major wildfires across Arizona, the bush fire here in Maricopa County and Bighorn fire here in Tucson. This is an image along the Beeline Highway from the bush fire. The Beeline Highway has essentially become a graveyard for saguaros at this point. You can see all these saguaros in this landscape are just standing skeletons at this point, and you no longer see any open ground. It's filled in by all these invasive species. The Telegraph fire in 2021 also started in desert landscapes, 181,000 acres. There's been lots of fires and very consistent fires in the wildland urban interface surrounding the Phoenix metro area. So these are just some examples of some recent fires in that area. So this much fire in desert ecosystems, which historically have not supported fire, is really something unique, something new that's happening here in the desert. I wanted to add this because I know that PAG in particular deals with air quality issues. Fires, the wildfire crisis has eliminated about 25% of the air quality gains that we've made since the year 2000, primarily because of these small particles, 2.5 microns in diameter, that are released during wildfires. We struggle sometimes to reach our ozone standard set by the EPA. And ozone is the main component of smog, and vegetation, when it burns, releases the components that form ozone. This is a graph just to show you how wildfire can affect ozone levels. This is from MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments. They have been struggling to reach their ozone standards set by the EPA. The line here in green shows the ozone levels without wildfires and how they increase with the wildfires that are occurring in the Phoenix metro area now. So the challenges that we're facing, these are the ones that stick out in my mind in regards to this issue, is that land managers' budgets and funding, it's inconsistent and unpredictable over time. So in the previous administration, federal administration, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, there was a lot of funding for wildfire mitigation. Wildfire continues to be a priority for the current administration, though we have seen decreases in funding. At the state level, Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management has been great about increasing funding in recent years, but it was a temporary increase. More legislation would have to be passed in order to sustain the levels of funding that we see right now. So this is a major problem in trying to control these invasive species when you are dependent on budgets that are unpredictable and highly variable. and it limits the collective action that can be done. These funding comes to specific agencies, and then it becomes siloed in those agencies. There's no easy way to share funding across agencies. And we live here in Pima County in an extremely jurisdictionally complex landscape. So just to give you a sense of how many different agencies are involved in managing invasive species on public lands and in right-of-ways of Pima County, here's a chart. So right now, these decisions on what we're going to treat, where we're going to treat, are made agency by agency, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And treatment can be successful. I didn't want to be all doom and gloom. Here's an image from Saguaro National Park, 2007. You can see this area. It's completely filled in with buffalo grass, that open space. They removed the buffalo grass. 5 years later, you can see that the open space is now there and the native species have come back. One of the nice things about this problem is that you do not need to do a whole lot of post-invasive species treatment restoration work. The seed bank still exists and the natives will come back. Another huge challenge is the lack of local contractor capacity. So, like for instance, right now, I am working with contractors that come from California and actually from the East Coast to get buffalo grass treated in the Tucson Basin. We had that rain in early October, and buffalo grass is greened up across the Tucson Basin. But we don't have contractors here locally that are capable of carrying out this work. It is really challenging work. So here's an image of a part of the crew from Recon Environmental, a contractor from San Diego that I've used multiple times on Tumamoc Hill. It would be great actually if we could end up treating more often in October and November with this type of rainfall, because this type of work is made that much more difficult when you have to do it in the summer. Generally, you're only treating these grasses when they are green with the herbicide. And so that green up happens in the summer. So being able to treat in October actually is a great change. And one of the other big challenges that I wanted to mention was the lack of an EDRR system, which stands for Early Detection, Rapid Response. So invasive species, when they first make their arrival into a new landscape, that is the most cost-effective time to control those species, right when they begin, because their populations are small. We are one of the only states, us and New Mexico, that do not have an early detection rapid response system. We don't have one locally. We are working on one through the group that I run, the cooperative weed management area, but we don't have one statewide either. And really, these species are coming in across state lines, so the state will need to be involved in this effort. Stinknet is right about here in Tucson. We're in a containment phase. Maricopa County has been swallowed by stinknet, so it's a forever issue now. We're always going to have to be working to keep stinknet out of our city. Buffalo grass has been here for a long time, and we are now in a situation where we're just managing it and perhaps figuring out how to establish fire breaks and mitigate the risk of wildfire that these invasive species bring. Well, here's just an image to show you stinknet observations in Maricopa County. And here we are in Tucson, many fewer. This is what happens when no action is taken to control stinknet. So the county has been very active and taken this problem of grassification and very seriously, as I think communities across the West have, especially with the recent disasters in Hawaii and LA, which was, feels like years ago now, but LA was just in January. So communities are generally, they generally have these things. Communities of our size have a community wildfire protection plan. They they expire after 10 years. So the Pima County Community Wildfire Protection Plan expired a couple of years ago. And the county has hired a contractor who is currently working on the plan. And there is a survey out right now that I'd like to include in the meeting notes if possible, to have this audience in particular help the county with feedback on that plan. In the interim, while there is no community wildfire protection plan in place, there is this Pima County Wildfire Mitigation Plan that was put together in the past 6 months. And that is also available for you to view and read, to look at on Pima County's website. Just Google Wildfire Mitigation Plan, Pima County. And I've been giving these talks to the EPAC committee for a long time. And, you know, EPAC, PAG, the primary focal areas are transportation, air quality, and then water quality. But invasive species impact all of those areas. And so I've been working more recently with colleagues from the University of Arizona. This work has been led by Elizabeth Baldwin, who is going to take over in just a second here. There's a variety of roles that we think PAG could play in helping us deal with this problem. One, support for a regional invasive species plan. None currently exists. There was a statewide plan that was developed in 2008 that was essentially ended up on a shelf, was never implemented. Support for communities, not just Pima County is preparing a countywide community wildfire protection plan, but municipalities also can prepare community wildfire protection plans. Given that transportation is a focus of PAG, they could take a lead in addressing invasives along our transportation corridors, which are the main ways that these invasive species are spread. Support in finding continuous stable sources of funding for these mitigation projects. Right now, a lot of this work, whether it's federal, state, or local, is funded by grants. There's no base budget for invasive grass mitigation. And that's a really challenging way for land managers to try and plan and execute projects to mitigate the threat of invasive grass and wildfire. And then also pulling resources across communities to ensure that invasives are treated where the priorities are most urgent. As I stated before, that the funding is really siloed within agencies, which really limits our ability to collaborate across jurisdictions. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Liz. And I don't know if you can also give Liz the power to move the slides forward.
I think I've got it.
Okay.
And I think let's see, do I have that power? Yes, I do. Great. I have a very brief couple of examples. I think hopefully Kim has illustrated the importance and the urgency of this problem and also the challenges. And I wanted to just take a little bit of time reminding us that people in our area, in our region, have tackled difficult challenges before, and I think that we can too. I actually think that Pima County is well positioned to figure out how to manage these problems in a long-term systematic way. And just to kind of recap, one of the things that Kim was kind of alluding to, buffalo grass and other invasive species are a part of our landscape now. And so they will be a long-term, probably permanent thing that we have to figure out how to deal with, which includes figuring out how to fund it, how to take responsibility, how to long-term be planning for these things. And so I'm bringing just two examples of ways that other jurisdictions have tackled what I think are similar problems to make them be part of a long-term consistent strategy for dealing with challenges. So the first one, this is actually a pretty interesting example. I think the Mojave Valley Irrigation District, they deal with Russian thistle. This is over in western Arizona. And Russian thistle is a bit of a fire risk, but it's also a big, it's a thirsty plant. And in that area, people grow alfalfa. It's primarily a farming area. and alfalfa is the primary crop, but it's water intensive. And one of their big challenges is just having enough irrigation water to go around. And the district has developed a conservation agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation where farmers can fallow their land and receive water conservation payments. And one of the problems with Russian thistle is that if it invades your fallowed land, then you're not going to get that conservation funding because the Bureau of Reclamation's monitoring system will find out that you're actually growing something that's soaking up water from the Central Arizona project. Russian thistle also destroys the value of the alfalfa crop. If it goes from your neighbor's farm to your farm, your crop is worthless because it's contaminated now with Russian thistle seed. And so one of the things that they have done, they're actually the only community to my knowledge that has done this. The state of Arizona allows communities to create weed districts. And their irrigation district has created a weed district. And what they do, it's relatively simple. When the irrigation district is inspecting farms, when they're reading meters to figure out how much irrigation water, they're also inspecting for Russian thistle. And if they detect it, it's reported, and then the farmer needs to address it. I don't know that this would be applicable exactly to fire-prone weeds in Pima County, but it gives this illustration of a way when you make really clear these are the costs of the invader, and you have some kind of system to allocate authority and responsibility for detecting it, that they've been able to keep this problem in check. So that's example one on invasives. The other example that I just wanted to share, this is actually in our area, but we had a flooding problem. And back in the 1970s, there was a big flood in the Phoenix area, and that prompted the state of Arizona to say, hey, counties should have flood districts. And we in Pima County had a major flood in 1984. You can see some of those photos on the left, just showing all of the things that you don't want to happen in your community, the loss of roads, the loss of infrastructure. People died in the flood, people's houses were damaged. And at that point in time, Pima County made some changes to the way we manage our flood districts. And so we've created these districts now with the power to levy real estate taxes and fund activities. And you all are probably more familiar with this than I am, but a number of communities have opted to manage their own floodplains, and Pima County manages the rest in unincorporated areas. And they engage in activity to remove, first to build infrastructure, to put in washes, to have a system, and then to have the staff to maintain that system over time. So this is another example of, how do we take an ongoing serious environmental issue and roll it into just our permanent way of doing business. And that is really all that I have. And so I think, yep, that will be the next group. So I think, I don't know if we have time to open it up for questions at this point.
Thank you both very much for the presentation. I just wanted to address something that Kim said about including a survey in the meeting notes. Please do. I think we would all like to see that and contribute. I don't actually know because I don't have a schedule with time. How are we doing on time, Dustin? Can we take some questions?
Yeah, looks like we have 8 or so minutes left on the schedule.
I see a hand up from Michael Campbell.
Yeah, thank you for the fantastic presentation. Dr. B, I have a question for you about these special districts, these weed control districts, these flood control districts. There's, I think, 1 or 2 dozen of them that are defined under state law. I've looked at them a little, and they are, I think, at least in some cases, fairly difficult to form. You need not only a majority of the votes of everyone who is within that area, but they have to comprise a majority of the value of the land for the property within that proposed district, which I'm not even sure how you would hold an election that measures that. It's so far outside my scope, but it seems like a very difficult thing to create. What is the feasibility of changes at the state legislative, at the state level to change statute around how these districts are formed? How feasible is it? Are there common sense approaches to changing these formation rules that everyone can agree on?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think your read of the statute is exactly right. I think that's the reason why we see it in the Mojave and we don't see it anywhere else. I don't know the backstory on what the legislature was thinking when they authorized these weed control districts, but I think that they had in mind something that looked a lot more like that Mojave irrigation district, predominantly agricultural area, than they had something that we deal with, like how do you manage swaths of conservation land, right? So I think that you're exactly right. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think, we could certainly try. The legislature has been pretty responsive to this issue. They recognize the fire risk. Several years ago, when Julio Betancourt first raised the alarm on this, he went up to the legislature and they put bufflegrass on the noxious weed list. So I actually think that there's untapped potential to talk to the legislature and say, hey, maybe you could make it easier for us to take the authority to manage this grass locally.
Thanks. Luke?
Hi, I just wanted to, again, thank you for this presentation. One of the projects that Sonora Institute's currently working on with the Tucson Bird Alliance and with Pima County Flood Control is this sort of wildlands user interface invasives abatement project in the name of wildfire mitigation. So the county for years with Tucson Bird Alliance, right, has been basically going from the western side of the Catalinas and are flushing by way of herbicide treatment, are flushing invasives down basically into the urban area from upstream to downstream, right? So that then we can sort of get it once it's all been concentrated sort of in that ultimate area. So this is all to offer to say, if it's not already known, that there are hundreds, if not thousands of acres that the county is already working on or has worked on that could serve as further justification for addressing legislature to say, like, look, Pima County is on this. We are progressive. We're not going to be reactive to this. And here's a demonstration of what we've accomplished so far. I know it's sort of integrated in what you're saying here, but we are very happily in the process of I think we have another 2 years on the grant that we're working on right now. That's sort of on the northern side of the Rito over towards Sabino.
That's great, Luke. Thanks.
Happy to share that information anytime.
I would love to chat more. I mean, Pima County's been doing so much, we almost can't keep track of everything that they have been doing. And I think that other counties in Arizona would look to what we are doing as a model because we're much more out in front of it.
And I'm just going to address the question about legislative potential as well, because this is something I think about a lot. And today ADQ is having a meeting on their legislative priorities for the next year. There is, I think, a lot of room in the legislature, particularly when we're looking at like associations of governments, like the county governments, the municipalities, the rural, I can't remember what it's called, Rural Arizona Action. I think there are many ways to reach this legislature if there is a coordinated effort that happens early enough. So that's my 2 cents on that. Does anybody else have questions for our panelists, or do we have any final words from the panelists before we move on? All right, well, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next information item, which is assessing effluent recharge in-stream potential in Green Valley. If we can get slides up, or somebody wants to tell me who the presenters are, I can do their bios as well.
Abigail, it's going to be myself and Michael Campbell.
Thanks, Luke.
And I've got an intro slide that I love to put up in advance that I had failed to share because I just got back from PTO. If that's cool, if I can get sharing option. There we go.
I'm actually wondering though if Sky Island and Watershed Management Group are before that because we're talking about invasives.
Yeah. Abigail, this is Sky Island Alliance and Watershed Management, still part of agenda item 4.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Sarah's next.
Okay.
Along
we
with
have Sarah's.
Jace.
I'm sorry, Sarah and Jace are next.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that their slides that's up right now?
Right.
Okay, great. Sarah Truby, Habitat Conservation Manager, joined Sky Island Alliance in 2021 to lead their water programs. She is focused primarily on their community science Spring Seeker program and is also responsible for habitat restoration and for enhancing water sources for wildlife and other uses across the Sky Island region. Jace Lankow is the Desert Rivers Restoration Manager at Watershed Management Group. He focuses on managing riparian restoration projects in exurban and rural landscape settings within the Santa Cruz and San Pedro watersheds, while also coordinating community collaboration on project planning within the greater Tucson area. Originally from Minnesota, Jace has now been facilitating natural resource projects in Southern Arizona for over 15 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Abigail. So once again, my name is Sarah, and I'm going to be talking about some of the recent invasive species removal efforts in some of our springs around the region. One thing I neglected to put in my slides that actually relates to what Luke mentioned, a few groups that are involved in these efforts formed kind of our own little working group called the Riparian Repair Project, and that includes us, Tucson Bird Alliance, representing Sonoran Institute through that funding source, as well as Watershed Management Group. And then a few others who are interested in these kinds of efforts. And so we're kind of rebooting that this fall because a lot of us all got funding from the Department of Forestry and Fire Management to do some of this work. And so it makes a lot of sense for us to all be talking to each other as well as working out there in the field. So for those of you that are not familiar with Sky Island Alliance, I did just push, there we go. Okay, perfect. It works great. So our organization is designed to protect and restore the diversity of life and lands in the Sky Island region of the US and Mexico. We're working to ensure the Sky Islands are a place where nature thrives, open space and clean water are available to all, and people are connected to the region and its capacity to enrich our lives. Because our focus is pretty regional, we tend to prioritize projects where we can really catalyze a lot of important change in a small area that's very impactful, like our Sky Islands or like particular springs within those Sky Islands. And because Abigail gave me a great intro, we can skip the next slide, which is just about me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our springs projects in the Santa Cruz watershed. So we received funding from the Department of Forestry and Fire Management to work at 9 different springs across 4 different landowners, which is pretty complicated. But those springs are kind of shown in these darker blue dots. Mescal Spring, the 2 springs in Davidson Canyon, Posta Quemada Spring, which is on Colossal Cave Mountain Park. Then at the top of the map, we have Mercer Spring, which is on Forest Service, Rancho Pendoshi, which is on flood control property, and then the 3, Rockledge, Barrel, and Gibbon are on private property up in the Sabino Springs neighborhood. The 2 areas that I do want to talk about today include just a little bit from the Davidson Canyon sites, and then we'll move up to the Rockledge Spring area. So earlier this summer, we were out at those 2 springs removing tamarisk. We partnered with the county to be able, Sky Island Alliance only uses manual removal, but we can partner with entities that use chemical treatments. So we worked with the county to treat some tamarisk that were around these spring sites. And then we also had a follow-up volunteer workday where we uprooted as many other seedlings as we could find. So that was our tamarisk treatments around those particular springs. There is still tamarisk in those drainages, but we're hoping by knocking it back around the springs, we can give a chance for some more of our riparian species to recover in those areas from the seed bank, like Kim mentioned. But I do also want to talk about our arundo removal efforts, which is more related to also what Jace is going to talk about next, as far as I know. And so these are ongoing up in the Sabino Springs neighborhood. So the first spring I'm going to talk about, well, the main one I'm going to talk about is Rockledge Spring. Initially, when we started this project, we didn't actually know the name of that site. And so I did some digging in the water rights documentation to try and figure out what the name was. And it's fantastic if you haven't played around in our water rights documentation in the state of Arizona. They actually digitized all of these, and you can get them online based on a geographical lookup. So you can find out, if you find a spring, you can find what the name, at least at some point, was. This one's pretty cool. So it identifies Rockledge Spring at a flow rate of about 6,000 gallons per day. At least that was true back in 1929 when this water right was placed on this spring. So some other information that came out of the water rights document that we did not uncover really until we were actually removing the arundo was that the spring was pretty well developed and was piping water away from the spring site. That's all kind of been obliterated by the development in the area, or so we thought, and I'll show you some interesting things as we get further along. So when we started, this is kind of what the spring looked like from the road. And you can see there's cottonwoods there, there's palm trees. On the right-hand side of this image is a Ruslantia. And then the arundo field is about 2 acres of arundo, a little bit less, maybe like 1.5 acres of arundo that just spanned all the way up. And then in that, before the mountains in this picture, you can kind of see the roof line of a house that's there. So we started actually weekly removal events. Last June, which was admittedly pretty hot, but we did have quite a few volunteers who were willing to come out. We did kind of a weeds at dawn approach where we would stop when it got too hot at about 8 or 9 a.m. And so we started clearing the site, and that continued for essentially the next year. This is obviously an urban area. So we had to be cautious about, putting a dumpster on the road, stacking materials. Like there was a lot of kind of extra logistics that we had to consider at the site, which was very enlightening for all of us. So we continued to remove things. And then you can kind of see how dense the arundo was. So we only knew of a little tiny pocket of surface water at this site, which was pretty different from that water rights document of the 6,000 gallons per day. There was only a little tiny puddle on the far side of the site, and this is what most of the site looked like, was just impenetrable arundo. And I don't know how much that's been talked about as a species here, and maybe Jace will cover some of it, but it does have a tendency to kind of form these impenetrable thickets around water, which can be really problematic for wildlife accessing that water, and then of course crowding out all of the native species. So then about a year went by as we were working on this project. Even while we were working on the project, we started to uncover pockets of surface water. And this looks blurry, but it's because it's super zoomed in on my phone. While we were working on the site, we had a family of 3 bobcats come through and drink out of one of the new puddles that we had uncovered at the site. And as we continued to work on the site, we just uncovered more and more water. So this is now what the site looks like. It has been cleared of arundo, although we do have some loose roots after the excavation that we're going back through in a month or so to collect all of that material as well. We already have cattails and sedges coming in. We have some other willows actually appearing at the site for the first time, which they have not been there, at least in the memory of the folks that live there. And you can see that there's surface water here. I'm going to show another view in a second from the top side of the site. There's actually surface water through the whole upper part of the site, as well as we uncovered 3 different spring boxes, which we did not fully know were there. And so once again, while we were at the site on the left there, we have javelina that come through. This was a day where we had, I think, 20 different javelina come through and wallow in some of the water. And then on the right-hand side, in the foreground, we have 1 spring box, which is flush with the ground. We actually left that one open as kind of a little surface water pool. And then kind of in the background, you can see some wood covers because we kept uncovering these large water tanks on the site. And this was completely, we didn't know any of this because the entire site was covered in arundo all the way over to those saguaros over there. So, just to put it in context, we ended up removing 297 tons of arundo. I asked the internet what that was comparable to, and that is a fully loaded Boeing 747, 50 to 75 elephants, 99,000 house cats, more than 500,000 packages of bacon, or 1 30-foot asteroid. We were trying to put that in terms that like some were a little bit more understandable, because this was a colossal, huge project to undertake, and it was even more colossal than any of us realized when we started. But now we're excited about the amount of water that's at the site and the return of some of these native plants and what that means for these low elevation sites that are critically important for wildlife migrating across the landscape. So some of the next things that we're doing, we have a few other sites in the Sabino Springs neighborhood that also have arundo. They have less water and less arundo, but they are pretty upstream of a lot of other places. And so we're still going to tackle that plant up there. And we're also hoping that as we remove the arundo, we'll see more and more surface water like we did at this site. We also obviously are continuing to remove the invasives at the other sites across Coronado, Pima County, and flood control. And then one of the things that we are logistically working on right now is how we can do long-term work at these sites. Most grants only have this 3-year period. We feel very lucky that we got the Department of Forestry and Fire Management funding for this project, but finding follow-up funding for the next 5 to 10 years of rechecks at these sites is something that we're trying to figure out really how to fund that so that we can effectively eradicate these plants from these sites. So That was all that I was going to talk about, but I'm going to put my contact information up. And please feel free to reach out by email or by phone, whatever makes sense, if you have any questions about this project or some of the Arundo work or other invasives work that we're doing around the watershed. And I don't know if we're just going to roll right into Jace's presentation or if people have questions, but yeah, whatever happens next, I'm happy.
Thank you. I'd like to roll right into Jace's presentation and then save some time for questions for the both of you at the same time.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I did just send a share request. All right, awesome. How are things looking? Great. So talk a little bit about the this effort, which is heavily headed by our River Run Network program, which is part of WMG. It's our community focused program to honor the heritage of our waterways and the value that water holds for people in Southern Arizona. It's a free membership. We're approaching about 5,000 members at the moment, and we do like a biweekly email with invitations to creek walks, family education events at our living lab here in Tucson, river cleanups, restoration workshops, and advocacy events. So I definitely implore anyone here that's not part of the River Run Network here in Tucson to go ahead and go to our website and get added in. Love to see you there. So again, talking about giant cane, Arundo donax, and I do have a little bit more information that Sarah touched on a bit. It is native to Eastern Asia. Tall ornamental grass in the Tanque Verde, it can get up to 20 to 30 feet tall, as you can see here. It was introduced in the early 1800s for erosion control in Los Angeles, and it's made its way to wreak havoc in the desert Southwest. And the dense root systems were key for the erosion control, and those caused problems out here. So the issues that we're concerned with Arundo, the water use requirements use up to 4 times as much water as natives. It definitely crowds out native riparian species, reduces wildlife habitat, and causes problems with flooding due to the dense root mats and fire as it dries out and burns. So yeah, Sarah provided some great photos of just how dense those stands can be, and they just crowd out anything and everything that's native and trying to grow here. When I actually first started removing Arundo, it was out at Rockledge Spring with Sarah in Sky Island. And getting within the cane, I was expecting to see, you know, pack rat middens just chock full of different insects and wildlife because it's just so dense, but it's actually just so dense that it crowds everything out. So there's not much to be found within these stands. So the focus area here, here's a representative map of the shallow groundwater areas in Tucson. We're going to focus on the Tanque Verde Creek area along the Santa Catalina and Rincon Mountains. As you can see, there's quite a bit of the blue shallow groundwater in that area. There's a little bit more of a representation of where we're talking, and I believe that does also encompass Sarah's area of focus as well for Arundo removal. Another map here just showing where we're talking. And shallow groundwater is defined to be within 50 feet of the surface here. And as you can see, as we go along the Tanque Verde, we're getting within 20 feet of the surface. And just keep in mind why that might be important, especially here in the arid Southwest. Here is a map of the 22-year groundwater level change from the year 2000 until 2022. So again, in the area that we're talking about, we're recharging, we're coming back. So there's some good things to be talked about here. There are some reasons for that. It's not all as positive as it might seem, but for our purposes, it's definitely a step in the right direction. So reduced groundwater pumping and using our own groundwater resources has allowed the aquifer to recharge. There's been a shift to city water and reliance on the cap, and reclaimed water use specifically at 49er Country Club, which is a golf course just adjacent to the Tanque Verde where we work. And to give you a little bit more context of where we're at, it's along Tanque Verde Road and Wentworth, pretty east. So I'd like to talk a bit about why shallow groundwater is important, and why it supports the flow in the Tanque Verde Creek. It supports the Watershed Management Group's 50-year vision, which is to restore the heritage of year-round free-flowing rivers in Tucson. So riparian trees are of great importance for a number of reasons. Cottonwood and Gooding's willow are specific focuses. They can be between 40 to 50 feet to 60 feet tall, and their roots are actually very shallow within, relatively speaking, for desert plants. Cottonwood, maybe 10 feet deep. Gooding's willow, 7 feet deep. It's really not that deep when you consider some of the other adapted plants to the desert. So they really do rely on this shallow groundwater. So this diagram here just kind of shows when you pull that groundwater from wells with that cone of depression, just how that can draw from the resources that they're tapped into. Historically, there have been mesquite bosques. We still have some remnants around town, and just beautiful gallery forests of mesquite, velvet mesquite, and the understory is also very important. So in this area that we work, there's a Mexican elderberry forest, which again is wonderful to see. Would love to have you come out and walk through it. Here's a representative photo of the area that we are working. It's a beautiful area. One of the last, in a way, untouched floodplains of Tucson. I love the Rito River, but with the sand cement, as well as with the Santa Cruz River, if you do want to see what those look like, I recommend going out to the Tanque Verde on the east side. So I'm sharing some stats here. These do need to be updated for our last season, but just to give you a relative representation, 65 acres of land have been restored, which includes arundo removal and then also revegetation with native plants. An estimated 200,000 pounds of arundo have been removed. Sarah, thank you so much for all of your just how to move that into something that we can understand. It's a ton of arundo. You might say, but actually it's hundreds of tons, as you said. So in this case, 100 tons. But yeah, we're now over that figure. And again, our River Run network focuses greatly on individual volunteer efforts. Can't do this without the volunteer folks who come out. So each year we have between 100 and 200 new people coming out to help in this effort, which accumulates to 3,000 hours of work that's gone in so far. This is what it looks like. As with Sarah's effort, in Sky Island's effort, this is all mechanical treatment. So cutting down the stalks and then removing the roots either by hand and pick or by excavator, depending on the size of the root balls. And you can see some arundo in the background that's still standing. This again just shows also, in addition to the Tanque Verde, we do have removal efforts in the Pantano and the Rito. It's not as prevalent there. The stands aren't as dense, but the propagation from arundo is mostly based on it getting washed down and repopulating from the nodes rather than seed dispersal, which is a little bit problematic with the flooding, but in a way, it's a positive thing that we can manage by keeping it within the waterway rather than dispersing via pollen and seed. again, just we get work groups out there, folks that don't typically get out into nature. We like to get them out, get them doing something positive for the native Tucson environment here. We also have a Flow 365 monitoring program within the River Run Network, very volunteer focused, and we're keeping track of just flow within our creeks and rivers here in Tucson. So yeah, going back to 2021, just monitoring these stats, using them to indicate drought, and then in certain areas where we're removing Arundo, helping with that monitoring effort as well. This diagram you've seen before. I've included the pressure transducer here that we have started implementing into some groundwater wells in and around Tucson. Here's one near Agua Caliente. Again, with some, can't do this work without the help of volunteers. So this is a private well that we're outfitting for monitoring. Just really love getting the community involved for this community science initiative. We had implemented one well with a pressure transducer prior to this year, and our focus is to get up to 10 wells instrumented in shallow groundwater areas specifically. So we have 2 in the Rincon Creek area. We have a number in the Tanque Verde, Sabino Creek, and Agua Caliente area. Our next focus is to really make an effort to try to get one, if not more, wells implemented in the Sutherland CDO area on the northern side of town. So I'm still looking for some wells that could help with that. So if anyone has any leads, please let me know. And I love this photo. This is just very representative of what I spoke about earlier with the braided channel, the access to the floodplain. But as you can see, there's also encroaching development in and around. So that's something we'll have to monitor forthcoming. But this is a great spot to be, great spot to work, and really happy to be doing some work out there to help the river. So thank you all.
Thank you both very much. Justin, do we have some time for questions?
Yeah, set aside 5 minutes for questions.
I have a quick one. I'm a fiber artist, so I'm curious if there's anything that can be done with the Arundo in terms of, I looked it up, it looks like it can be used for building, musical instruments. I don't know if it can be used for fiber. What are we doing with these giant piles of invasive species?
Yeah, so I can talk about what Skyline's doing. So we are, for the most part, sending it to green waste, which is why we have the accurate weight, because they weigh every load that comes in. So we're sending it to tanks, and it's turned into mulch and materials for yards. However, I did read also, I'm a woodwind player, and I did read that a lot of the Arundo is actually used for reeds, for reed instruments. Which is, we're not doing that at our site, but I think that's kind of neat. And then one of our staff members also took a bunch of it, the dried out dead stalks, to build fences with. But I don't know if Jace, if you all are doing something else, but that's how far we've gotten with it, at least.
Yeah, so most of it gets chipped on the property of 49er, and so it gets just mulched back into the like elderberry forest that I spoke about earlier. Just keeping those, just keeping the nutrients on site. Most recently in May, we had our Flow and Feast, which was our 8th annual event in the Tanque Verde. We repurposed a bunch of those as walking sticks. It's a very family-friendly event of about 200 attendees. So I had the pleasure of cutting stalks of all sizes and choosing the best ones for walking sticks, which the families then decorated as part of our event. Next year, I think we're actually going to be doing wood chimes with them. And I'm going to be going out for a upcoming event with a ulterior purpose for as I'm cutting. I have an outdoor shower in my backyard that I'm going to be using Arundo as a privacy fence. So that'll be fun.
Thanks. Does anybody else have questions before we move on?
And
Not
Abigail,
a question, but
yeah, go
just a
ahead.
comment. No, I don't, it's not a question, just a comment on
Sure, Kim.
the fantastic work you guys are doing. It is so evident in the photos. It's so, it just makes my heart happy that there are such organizations doing such great work to make our community better for ourselves, but also for all the creatures that make it such a special place. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thanks. Any final word from our speakers before we move on to the next presentation?
Yeah, Abigail, if you want to get creative, I'm sure we could find some ways to purpose some of that for your art. So please let us know. I also have had people reach out about, some artists reach out about us sourcing some material for them. So
I
Yeah, it
also
would be interesting. The sweater I'm wearing, I made out of like a bamboo blend. So I'm like,
cool.
could I do that?
I did forget to mention we took one completely green set of Arundo, like the new regrowth, directly to the elephants at Reed Park. They will only take one truckload at a time of completely green Arundo. So that was delightful. It wasn't fibercraft, but it was pretty fun to think about the elephants chomping down on our plants.
Seems like a lot of fun. Okay, well, thank you both very much. And now we're moving on, I believe, to assessing effluent recharge in-stream potential in Green Valley. I think our speakers are Luke, Mike, and Kimberly. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm not, I'm going to introduce our next speakers.
I am not a speaker, Abigail. This is
You're not?
Kimberly. I'm not, but I'm here to help with questions related
Okay.
to the work we're embarking on down in Sahuarita.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we're starting with Luke. So Luke Cole is the director of the Santa Cruz River program. Luke joined Sonoran Institute in 2018 and manages the ongoing projects on the Santa Cruz River, working with staff and collaborators to restore and enhance this living river in the heart of southern Arizona and northern Sonora. Prior to joining the Sonoran Institute, Luke worked for the Washington, D.C. city government, tracking the district's green infrastructure and water quality improvement programs, with a focus on coordinating tree planting programs and policy. Luke has a PhD in environmental sciences from the University of Virginia, an MS in oceanography from the University of Rhode Island, and a BA in biology from St. Mary's College of Maryland. Mike Campbell, University of Arizona, graduated in May with a dual master's from the Urban Planning and Water Society and there's a lot of words there, Water Society and Policy Program. And Kimberly just introduced herself. So take it away, Luke.
All right. Thank you so much for this introduction. I'm gonna bump this slide very quickly, just to give folks sort of an orientation to where we are talking about. So the Santa Cruz River here in this schematic, and Mike will have much more detailed mapping here, but for the unfamiliar, this here is a schematic of the Santa Cruz River, which starts here in Arizona. It flows into Mexico and then it bends westward and northward, and then the river's path goes from Nogales through Green Valley, Sahuarita, through Tucson, and up to Marana. It ultimately connects hydrologically to the Colorado River. There are a few important sections here to note. These darker blue sections where my cursor is shows where there are perennial flows of water in the river. And those perennial flows are generated from effluent, from treated wastewater, everything that we put down the drain and that gets collected. What you will very easily notice here, aside from the 15 miles that flow down around Rio Rico, and then collectively about 25 miles that flow up here as a result of Pima County wastewater collection, treatment, and release into the river, is this prolonged dry reach of the river from right around the Pima County, Santa Cruz County line up here to around the San Javier district of the Tohono Nation. That is in part a geologic consequence. It's really deep area to get to bedrock down there. That's sort of a physical control. But also, there are only a handful of very small wastewater treatment facilities along this stretch of the river that are currently capturing the ever-growing populations in this Green Valley reach of the river, this middle stretch of the Santa Cruz River. So in 2019, Sonoran Institute met with some directors and staff from Pima County Wastewater and Pima County Flood control to ask, hey, what sort of planning has been done around this Green Valley middle reach of the river? There's a lot of people coming in there. That means there's a lot of wastewater, which means that there's the potential for in-stream introduction of that wastewater. So that conversation led to Sonora Institute receiving a Bureau of Reclamation grant, which we worked with Mike on to produce this final report that Mike is going to work through here. So thanks for that little opportunity for the mini introduction. And I'm going to hand it over to Mike, who will inform and dazzle you all. Mike, it's yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luke. I'm really happy to be here today, and I should make clear that I'm going to be presenting work that I did with Luke's supervision at Sonoran Institute, but also some work that I did kind of taking the project a little bit farther on my own as part of my graduate studies at the University of Arizona. So if there's anything in here you like, you should send your thanks to the Sonoran Institute, and if there's anything in here with which you take umbrage, please direct your complaints to me. Again, this opening slide here, you can see roughly where the Middle Santa Cruz River is located on this map of Pima County, Santa Cruz County, and the Tohono O'odham Nation. We define the Middle Santa Cruz River as being between the Santa Cruz County line and that southern border on the San Javier District. And as you can see, it is that dry part of the river that has no in-channel flow. And so it is a natural choice to focus on. There really is a long-standing desire for effluent-based flows in this region. If you go back to Pima County Wastewater's 2007 Regional Optimization Master Plan or Management Plan, I think it's Master Plan, there's discussion of wanting to do in-channel flow in this region. It also appears much more recently in the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative's Watershed Restoration Plan. And the anticipated population growth, as Luke says, means that as long as we have people in this area, we're going to have wastewater in this area, which means we're going to have treated wastewater in this area. So it is a reliable resource that the main question is not will we have it, it is how do we put it to best use for everyone in the area. And then finally, the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan and other sources identify these southernmost reaches of the Middle Santa Cruz River as an important location for habitat connectivity. If you conceptualize that area, if you've ever driven down Interstate 19 to Nogales, you're going through Tucson, and then it just kind of becomes beautiful. And there is a lovely community down there between, with Green Valley and Sahuarita, and followed by wide open countryside again as you continue on south. And that region connects a lot of very, very valuable habitat, and the Santa Cruz River is an obvious place to begin doing some environmental restoration with this wonderful water resource that we have. So with that question, how might we best implement effluent-based in-channel flows on the Middle Santa Cruz River? There were two big constraints on this planning project. The first one, very obvious, we cannot discharge more effluent than is produced. And the second constraint was that flows must not encroach onto the tribally governed lands of the Tohono O'odham Nation. That was a preference that was conveyed to us, and it's a preference that we respected and honored throughout this planning process. So that governed, the questions of where the water could go, and then led us to the question of how much water do we have to work with. And kind of corollary to that, how do we best ensure the long-term viability of these flows? It's always a little complicated giving these presentations to diverse groups of people because things that some of us take for granted might be new information for others. I think for many of us, this might be a refresher, but where does our effluent go? Much of it goes into recharge basins, constructed basins that receive treated wastewater and hold it in place as it infiltrates through the soils below it and rejoins our aquifer. Wastewater is a resource that we save by sticking it in the ground. We bank it underground. And if you're not originally from Arizona, that can be kind of a new concept for some people. We also distribute it through our purple pipe system. You heard Jace talk about how The 49ers Club is off of groundwater now. The purple pipe system is what makes that possible. It also goes to other uses like our roadside landscaping throughout the Tucson area, maintaining turf at golf courses and parks. A small amount of it goes to on-site reuse for grounds management at our wastewater reclamation facilities, and coming soon we have advanced water purification. But a very big fraction of this goes to in-channel flows. Again, you can see in this map the extent of these flows that Luke had mentioned before. What's noteworthy here is that most of these flows originate at outfall points located at wastewater reclamation facilities themselves. If you think about how our wastewater infrastructure is engineered, water wants to flow downhill. Our untreated wastewater is no exception to that. So our reclamation facilities tend to be located down gradient from major population centers. And as you can see, we have in-channel flows extending from the down gradient side of Nogales, extending from down gradient treatment sites in Tucson and Marana. But we also have the Santa Cruz River Heritage Project, where, as a community, we've decided that it is worth the expense and the trouble of moving some of this treated effluent up gradient and discharging this extremely high quality water resource into the Santa Cruz River channel at a point that's distant from the actual reclamation facility itself. And there's why that is such a wonderful resource for the city of Tucson could be a talk in and of itself. But that's an overview of the region. Zooming in here on the middle Santa Cruz River on Sahuarita and Green Valley, what we see here are footprints of the Sahuarita city limits or town limits with the dashed line that you see, and then with the light blue, the light green, and the light yellow, you see the service area footprints for the different sub-regional wastewater reclamation facilities that are in this area. Collectively, these produce about 3,500 acre-feet of effluent per year as of 2023. Long-term plans from Pima County Wastewater mention the possibility of regional consolidation with a regional facility somewhere along, the gradient of Pima County Road or Pima Mine Road, which is at the northern end of Sahuarita. So figuring out how much water we'll have to work with now was a simple matter of just looking at what the current production figures are, and then the future estimates were taken using resources published by PAG. Thank you, PAG, for creating your exhaustive 208 plan that included population projections for each of these service areas that I show on this map right here. And by looking at the per capita effluent generation today and scaling that out to look at future estimated populations in these service areas, it's possible to infer a ballpark figure of what regional effluent production will look like in this area come 2045. So that's what we are looking at the long-term planning horizon. That's the data we have to work with. And then the final piece of information to note is that there are current annual effluent delivery obligations from Green Valley Wastewater Reclamation Facility that we need to take into account. So that leads us to these numbers for the concept development here. Again, as I said, concepts 1 through 3 were work that I did with Luke at Sonoran Institute, and concept 4 was my own graduate work. And these concepts represent a range of scenarios from near term to intermediate term to far future, representing different fractions of total regional effluent availability on the middle Santa Cruz River. So scenario 1, this is pretty much what we can do today and what Kimberly Baeza can talk about in much greater detail than I, and whose work definitely needs to be credited and needs to be given a real shout out, because she is the person who is actually making this happen. And I feel about her work at Pima County Wastewater. I think the way she feels about that volunteer work that she was just discussing, it is a wonderful thing to see, because without people doing work like Kimberly is doing, these projects don't become a reality. These are just numbers on a slide right now. Kimberly is the person putting the water in the river. So concept one is near term, it is our current effluent production less our current effluent volume. And you can see that I translate all of these numbers here into extent of flow. I want to remind you all that I am not a hydrologist and I am not your hydrologist, but these are, I think, reasonable ballpark figures where 1 million gallons a day gets you about a mile of linear flow on the river. So our current availability gets us about 3/4 of a mile of flow. An intermediate scenario, and there are a number of ways at which you could get this intermediate scenario either through future consolidation and some fractional use, or through other avenues. But this median scenario gets you shy of 3 miles of flow, and then full future availability yields about 6 miles of linear. And then scenario four here, which again I want to emphasize, is the scenario that I cooked up on my own. This is full production output from a consolidated future regional wastewater reclamation facility that is conveyed to a distributed distribution system with multiple outfall points. The rationale for this was, how do you get the most bang for your buck with the water that you have that you're putting in the river? And one of it is to take it from down gradient to up gradient, where you can realize that maximum environmental benefit at sites like Canoa Ranch, but also the maximum social benefit at places like the Continental Road crossing in Green Valley, so that the benefits are distributed to the entire population of Green Valley and Sahuarita, so that everyone has access to this, and so that these sort of you know, Catlow at one point mentioned the phrase like these green jewels on a chain going down the river, and that is another way of thinking about it. So that is the four scenarios that I'm going to walk you through some very straightforward maps of each of those. This is concept one. This is current effluent availability. And you can see in orange is the footprint for Green Valley Wastewater Reclamation Facility. There's sort of this triangle of relatively undeveloped land bounded by South Nogales Highway and Continental Road. And you can see the reach of flow within that area right there. The Juan Batista de Anza Trail is located in this area. You can see that in yellow. So you have an existing recreational resource whose value is only being improved by discharging this water into the river to infiltrate into our aquifer rather than into these basins that you can see in the footprint right there. Concept two, this is intermediate effluent availability. Again, as I mentioned, there are multiple pathways to this scenario. Again, you can see that sort of triangle formed by Quail Crossing Boulevard, South Nogales Highway, Continental Road. In this case, flow extends past South Nogales Highway. There are some agricultural crossings that are on this stretch of river. I spoke a little with some folks from RFCD, and one of the items that they mentioned that was interesting to me was that some of their current standard designs for grade control structures are engineered to allow equipment to cross over those grade control structures. And I don't want to give, actual pitch on those grade control structures, but I believe it is suitable for agricultural equipment. And it's hard to stop me from info dumping because this stuff is so near and dear to my heart. But way back in the late 60s, early 70s, when I believe Tucson was still running wastewater and not the county, there was a huge increase in the amount of effluent that we started discharging into the Santa Cruz River, and the extent of flow went way out. And so there is kind of past precedent for dealing with how do we manage agricultural lands and new in-channel flows at the same time. And so that's a part of our history to look toward for managing that aspect. Concept three here, this is full future availability. You can really see, what 6 miles looks like as that Green Valley Wastewater Reclamation Facility footprint gets smaller and smaller in these maps. We're looking down to basically central Sahuarita with 6 miles of flow entering the river at the Green Valley Wastewater Reclamation Facility outfall. There is conveyance infrastructure for CAP water in this area. I believe it's privately owned, but we are already doing upgradient delivery of some water resources in this area. So, under a future consolidation scheme, there would need to be some movement of water up gradient in order to keep it from encroaching on tribal lands, which are shown in dark blue here. But that's certainly something for which, a precedent of built infrastructure exists in the area. And then concept four, again, I want to stress this is entirely my own work. And so if you take any issue with any of it, direct those criticisms toward me and not Luke. But this is full future availability of all of the effluent generated in the Middle Santa Cruz River region, distributed to have maximum social impact, have maximum recreational impact, have maximum environmental impact. And these sites were selected based a little bit on feasibility. You can see that I've included the Green Valley WRF outfall as one of the points. Partially that's for retaining the habitat value that we realize from future flows into this area. You don't want to distribute all this water and then dry up riparian habitat that you've already created. But it's also for realizing, this ecological value. You can see where Canoa Ranch is on the south side, the bottom part of this image. Madera Canyon and Dimitri Wash outfalls. I selected both of these points because they have washes that connect to high value habitat in the uplands to the east from Madera Canyon. And then Dimitri Wash outfall is really the only unpaved crossing for wildlife to get under I-19 for about 20 miles in either direction from Dimitri Wash. So that is a place to put water in a location where species are moving east-west. The Continental Road outfall was selected in part because it's a way of getting a recreational asset to the Green Valley community, but also because you have potentially a bit of a perched aquifer in that area. Luke mentioned extreme depth to groundwater in this area, but there is some information out there in various reports that reflect a shallow depth to an aquiclude in this area. And there are some archaeological reports of habitation in this site that show things like presence of riparian species. And whether or not that reflects stuff that was, plant matter that was brought in versus grown there, I'll leave that for other people to decide. But anytime you're doing environmental restoration, the question is what are you restoring to what point in time, or what values are you restoring for? And I think over the past, 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years of history on this river, we have had different flow regimes for each of those time periods. And then the Sahuarita outfall, again, this is something for realizing social and recreational value, delivering some of that water resource to the Sahuarita community as well. And the Leemore Wash outfall was chosen for its proximity to that historic mesquite bosque that once existed in this part of Pima County on the Santa Cruz River. And it does avoid the Tohono O'odham tribal land. Finally, last slide here, management concept for best managing the water resources that we put into the river. This is kind of some policy nerdery here. I call these DRAM credits, drought response and adaptive management credits. Every time we put 1 unit of water into the ground, depending on the type of storage facility that we put it into underground, we get either the right to withdraw half a unit or 95% of a water unit out of the ground. So put a gallon in, you can get 95% of a gallon out of the ground in most cases in Pima County. And there's some caveats to that. And so this concept of DRAM credits is that you save some fraction of these credits for future drought response and adaptive management. And you spend these credits for future in-channel flows when you need them for drought response. Say you've had, a fire on one stretch of the river and you want to increase extent of flow downstream to make sure that you have good cottonwood recruitment on that reach to help the population recover. And you need to bump up flow a little bit. So the example math that I give here is, you want to increase flow 20% year over year from 1,000 acre feet. That means you need to put in an extra 200 acre feet of water into the river. You do that, and if that water goes 90% to infiltration and 10% to evapotranspiration, that 90% fraction of new in-channel flow that you've just spent on gets returned to you in the form of additional long-term storage credits. So in this scenario, you add 200 extra acre feet, and then you get about 171 acre feet returned back to your water banking account. And the net credit spend is only 29 acre feet of water. And there may well be years where the city of Tucson has approved car washes that are spending more water than that. And so you would use those LTSCs either through, pumped groundwater or cap deliveries and banking cap water for other people. There's a variety of ways of doing those credit exchanges. But this is basically just the math to show that if you are managing this for environmental value, there's an easy way to bump flow numbers. I shouldn't say easy. Nothing is ever easy in the water world. But there is a potential method of increasing flow without spending on water to the extent that it looks like you might need to spend at first glance. So I'll leave it there, and I'll open the floor to questions. I'll ask Luke first if there's anything that he wants to add, amend, or caveat, and ask Kimberly as well. Kimberly, is there anything that you are kind of biting your tongue, needing to desperately correct me on that I got wrong? Because I don't want to get wrong any of the good work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just would like to add that, there is a scenario under which the Tohono O'odham Nation, the San Javier District, is open to flows. We are engaging with them in conversations around their needs for treatment, for conveyance and treatment of wastewater. The casino is not far from there, but there are opportunities, I think, to collaborate on this, on more than we treat their water, but also, in putting the water just downstream of the facility at the river. It is a possibility. It would probably, on our part, involve permitting through EPA and in additional consultation, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that they'd be open to that. And, I want us to think too, building infrastructure to move water upgrading. And in this case, more than 5 miles upriver to the Green Valley wharf facility outfall, that would be very expensive, perhaps prohibitively expensive, right? Just given that there are other alternatives for the water, for reusing the water. The mines are interested in the water. Local farmers, I think the Pecan Grove people, as well as the Phoenix Zoo, are interested in the water. So the more attractive we can make the option of sending the water to the river closest to the facility, I think would be advantageous.
Yeah, and certainly, there is not much in this world that is more energetically expensive than moving water uphill. So yeah, I thank you for mentioning that, Kimberly. Luke, anything that you want to add?
No, you covered it excellently. I'd rather get input from other folks and keep on schedule.
All right.
Thanks. I see a hand. I do want also for us to be mindful of schedule. We have a hard stop at 11:30, and it's 11:08. So if it's okay, I think I'm going to take 2 questions if there are any, and then we're going to move on to the next agenda item. So I just see Jace's hand right now. So Jace, floor is yours.
Yeah, this will be quick. It's less of a question, more of a statement for Luke and Mike and Kimberly. My supervisor, Katlo Shipek, our senior program director, was working with the BOR Bucket 3 proposal, which got declined, but he had some ideas about channel and floodplain restoration and promoting native riparian habitat at the Green Valley reclamation facility there. He's looking for ADQ funding for Section 319 now. So I'd love to kind of loop you all in with that as that progresses.
That sounds great, Jace. Thank you. Yeah, and to sort of run this out to this was a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Phase 1 grant. The idea under a fully functioning federal government is that then, of course, that's phase 2 would be the next phase, which would be implementation, which would, I think, align really nicely with what Catlo was envisioning there, Jace. So I think in the meantime, finding state funds, finding other mechanisms to at least evaluate and ideally try to enhance in-stream vegetation and rehabilitation would be ideal until we're able to get things back on their feet as they ought to be, so we can explore this phase 2 implementation version of it.
Wonderful. Sounds great.
Great
Thank you
question.
all.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Does anybody else have questions, or do any of the presenters from the last presentation have anything else to add? Okay, really appreciate that. I'm hoping we can get everybody's slides from these presentations distributed to EPAC so we can all look at them again ourselves, and I can find where all the springs are and stuff like that. So I'm going to move us on to the EPAC top environmental issues list for 2026. I'm hoping we can share those. It's many pages, but I hope you've all had a chance to look at them. I really want to thank Dustin. I sat there and did a side-by-side comparison of them with our previous issues, and also added stuff that wasn't in there and made a lot of very nitpicky comments, and he incorporated them all and responded to me with reasons why some and some could and could not be put in. So I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping everybody else had a chance to look at it as well. We will be voting on this in December, so there's lots of time to look through it. If you do have questions or comments before then, we have a little time now in case anybody has questions about it or comments. Dustin, can we get that up on the screen?
I didn't have it in the presentation, Abigail, but it's in the meeting materials packet, the draft list that we sent out October 2nd. And maybe at the end of the presentation, if we have time, we can see if the meeting staff can bring it up.
Great.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Did you want to present on it?
Yep, I can get into that
right
now.
Thanks, Dustin.
For agenda item 6. Hi, everybody again. Dustin Fitzpatrick, PAG's Environmental Planning Administrator. I've taken over as PAG staff lead for EPAC from Mead Meyer. She was running the previous meeting. She was with PAG 19 years, running the watershed planning section, and we're grateful for her service and expertise. But if you haven't heard, she moved on to Pima County Regional Flood Control. Okay, so here's an overview of the top environmental issues list. It's developed annually through PAG and EPAC. Most recently, we had the 2025 list that underwent several revisions, and we approved that at our last meeting in May. These issues form the basis for meeting topics, so most of our agenda items are seeded by that issues list. It also informs our area-wide water quality management plan, the administrative updates for that 208 plan, and informs decision makers and encourages regional collaboration. So, for example, in the past, EPAC has made recommendations to the PAG Regional Council on resolutions that they have adopted for regional environmental issues. Some examples of those resolutions for the past we're supporting our heritage of desert waters. There's a resolution for Bufflegrass Eradication Day, one for regional resilience to climate and weather variability, and also one of the important ones, development of a regional greenhouse gas inventory, initial one that we've kept going. So I'll speak a bit about the development process. So that preliminary draft of the issues list for next year That went out to the full EPAC, WPS, and EQS members on October 2nd for 2-week input. We had worked with the chairs and staff to update that list. Up front, we added references to topics such as renewable landfill biogas, data centers, the Sonoran corridor. We put in affordability considerations and others that you may have noticed. And like I mentioned, that was included in today's materials. We had restructured that into the new bulleted topic format, so it views more as a list versus the previous structure, which had in a complete narrative. So after that 2-week period, we incorporate the comments and feedback into the draft. Abigail mentioned she had some minor changes that we'll put in for the draft that'll go forward for the vote in December. Other than that, we had several folks in agreement with it. Chuck Stack, our Oro Valley citizen rep, provided some good input on and enjoyed the bulleted format. He's always got great insight. I think one of his references, I'm not sure if everyone saw the story on the bear in the Fry supermarket in Oro Valley, and maybe that being too connected of wildlife under that topic. So we're going to go ahead and move that forward at the December EPAC meeting. Abigail mentioned as an action item. Something we're going to shift to as part of that action is to share that on with Management Committee, Regional Council, and the PAG Executive Director. That wasn't done in the past couple of years. So moving that on, that provides awareness at a higher level. EPAC is a technical committee that advises to the Management Committee above us, which is a policy advisory committee to the PAG Regional Council and the PAG Executive Director. And secondly, the list provides future agenda item topics for the 2026 meetings. At the end of our meetings, we end with a request for future agenda items. So you can always feel free to put forth requests at that time, or email me or the chairs between meetings with ideas and suggestions for future speakers or topics that your jurisdictions or organizations would like to share on or present, so we can get more excellent speakers from our community, such as the ones that we've seen this morning and heard from. On that list, here's the issues and topics that we cover. The main issues with environmental justice. We had that on last year. There have been some shifts in direction federally on implementing EJ and some of the federal documents and plans. We've had a lot of programs. The carbon reduction program has funded some plans that we've engaged in as a MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, generally with a transportation focus. Sometimes there's limitations on inclusion of the EJ, but we're also a council of governments, which provides instruction from the council on local issues that are important. The healthy environment, clean air, clean water, those are our core functions of our organization. We've got a air quality subcommittee meeting. Next one's planned for Tuesday, November 18th. On water, the watershed planning subcommittee is meeting next Monday morning, October 27th. We also get into the solid waste reduction, stewardship and enhancement, and wildlife connectivity. With regional resiliency, we've got the resilient infrastructure, resilient economy, obviously water reliability being an important topic in our desert home. And then the climate change adaptation and mitigation, that's an item that's risen to the forefront in recent years with our historical climate records. The drought, floods, and temperatures are imposing risks to our health, environment, infrastructure, insurance, a lot of items that are relevant to our region. And so, yeah, I think if we have time, the meeting staff, the list was in the meeting materials packet. We might possibly be able to bring that up and scroll through it. It was the draft list that went out, just minor changes from input, and that'll be presented at the December meeting as an action item, like I said, to form the basis for next year's meetings and to move on to management, regional council, and the PAG executive director.
Thanks, Dustin. And I would just like to encourage everybody to take the time to look at that draft list when it goes out again and compare it to last year's, and also have a look at our bylaws, just so you can see what we're doing and what we're trying to do there, so we can have a more detailed conversation and a vote in December, assuming that we have quorum that day. Does anybody have questions for Dustin or PAC staff or me or Paula, or anything to provide input on right now, knowing that today is not a vote on this item? It is a long document, but it is worth the read. And I appreciate Dustin's summary of the shifts in direction federally. That's a way of putting it. But I do still think that we have the direction and authority locally to carry out our mission. And that's what's in the priorities list. Anyone? Sweet, you did great, Dustin. Nobody has any questions. I heard a noise.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Abigail. If there's no questions, you're planning to return to that action item, approving the minutes. We can check with Melanie. We did have quorum of the 5 jurisdictions there. Just wanted to verify if Michael from Oro Valley, if you're still on, needed to confirm if you're sitting in as proxy, or if you're been put forward as a new representative from Oro Valley. We had Bayer and Dennis previously as the official reps.
Right. So I believe I'm filling in for Bayer now.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So I think Melanie confirmed quorum on the moving forward with the action item then. Or Melanie has
a hand.
Yep.
Oh, we actually lost our representatives from City of Tucson, so we fell below again, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we can look to approve those in December.
We do have one more item, which is just the future agenda items. If people have stuff they want to throw out now, so we can get that. And we've got 8 minutes, so we need to make it snappy. Okay. Well, you can also email Dustin, me, and Paula with future agenda items and ideas and questions as well. Is there
Abigail, I
anything?
see Howard Myers.
Oh, it's
there's a
not
hand
coming
up.
up on my screen. Okay. Sorry about that, Howard. Go for it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I would like this committee to consider adding to the top environmental issues list the following note, and I quote, "Clean air, clean water, clean soil for all equally," end quote.
To what part of it, Howard?
Wherever this committee believes is appropriate, but I would tend to think issue 1 under environmental justice
Okay.
might be a good location that this committee supports. Once again, clean air, clean water, clean soil for all equally.
Okay. We feel free to email that as well to Dustin, and I think I'm probably going to have some pushback on that because I think equal and equitable are conflicting terms when we're talking about environmental justice, but I think that's a longer conversation than we have time for right now. But I appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Anybody, Dustin? You don't need to raise your hand, Dustin.
Oh, yeah, we go. Yeah, I just want to circle back for that December meeting when we'll put that forward for a vote. Normally we're looking at the first Thursday, but regional council's been scheduled for December 4th. So we'll be looking at December 11th. And then again, if anybody wants to nominate themselves or others for one of the chair positions, we've had a great coming up on 2-year terms for Abigail and Paula. So we'd be looking to maybe move that to vote next time and then have those chairs begin next year. So thanks.
Howard, I don't know if you have a second point, if your hand is just still raised. If you have a second point, I don't see other hands, so you're welcome to make it.
No, I do not have another comment, and I will put that request in writing. And once again, I'm not saying it has to go at issue 1, environmental justice. I'm saying somewhere within the document, but I'll put that in writing.
Thank you, Howard. Does anybody else have anything else? All right, if not hearing anything else, it is 11:26 and I'm going to adjourn this meeting of EPAC. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Abigail. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.